Welcome back, Defenders. As of this week, we've entered a new phase of the war. We're done talking about peace talks, done talking about ceasefires. The Russians have given their final answer to the entire world. The Russians don't want peace. The Russians don't want a ceasefire. The Russians want to continue killing people and stealing their territory. Third sleepless nights, Russia pounds Ukraine with drones and missiles across multiple regions. Putin despises the world. Russia launches record drone assault on Ukraine. This was the third consecutive night of hundreds of drones and missiles targeting Ukrainian civilian cities. Ukraine's air defenses are doing the best they can. Successfully, they shot down 233 Shahed drones, 55 other different types of drones, and then 9 missiles, but 50 or 60 still hit their targets, which are civilian cities. And this is a frequency chart. I think this is beneficial to look at, going back to September of 2022. This was the first time that Iran started shipping their own domestically produced Shahed drones to Russia. Russia, I'm sure, was paying them, so for the first 2 years of these air attacks against civilian cities, these were imported, domestically produced Iranian Shahed drones, but then the frequency has gone up. And it's gone up because Russia started manufacturing their own drones, trying to increase output. And there was a small dip in the attacks going back to April. Putin did not want to upset Trump. But the Russians have dropped the ruse. They're no longer pretending. They were saving up these missiles and drones to launch this coordinated 3-day assault of hundreds. And this is the spike. That right there is 350 occurring 2 days ago. Here's a more recent chart. It doesn't have the most recent days, but it goes back to January 1st. And the blue is relatively cheap Shahed drones. And then the orange is the more expensive, more deadly ballistic and cruise missiles. It doesn't matter what Trump does. Since he was inaugurated, Russia is still blowing up apartment buildings, targeting schools, targeting hospitals, targeting grocery stores. Russia doesn't care what Donald Trump says or does. And here are the results. 12 civilians last night were killed and over 60 injured. Among the victims were 3 children from one family in the Zhytomyr region. Their parents were hospitalized with the mother in serious condition. I can share the pictures. There are no military assets or military targets anywhere near these drone strikes. This is deliberate. This is the unexploded warhead of an X-101 cruise missile found in the yard of a private residence of Kyiv, hopefully being defused and then taken away. And let me share with you a video. This video is actually from Lila Trokamets. This is Roman's sister. I showed Roman in my last video, and she's fine, but she's in the capital city of Kyiv, and this is the third consecutive night of almost no sleep as Ukraine's air defenses are shooting down all these missiles and drones.
That's loud, but I'm so freaking exhausted from the previous 2 nights that I'm not going anywhere. That's our air defense trying to shut the Shahed down. Fuck. Shit. Fuck. It's super close.
Lila is fine, she's safe, she survived the night. But Ukrainian civilians are dying every day. Here's another story, just one face, one name. Nadia Karbazina, age 33. She was running to protect her daughter when a Russian missile hit her home in Chuahiv. She didn't survive. Her little girl, Lyra, now has to grow up without a mother. Here are thoughts from Yulia. She's the first Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine. I want to share what she has to say. 2 weeks ago, Ukraine's closest allies made a clear commitment, a demand, that Russia halt its attacks on civilians or face real consequences. Russia responded not with compliance, but with a tactic they've used for years: fake negotiations, empty gestures, and just enough noise to delay action. And in that delay, they've massively escalated, striking harder, wider, and deadlier. Civilians are being killed in their homes, children burned alive, doctors and rescue workers buried under rubble, a methodical campaign to break Ukraine by destroying its people. It's a genocide. The world cannot meet this with patience. We need more air defense systems now, not when the process allows, but when lives depend on it, and they do. If we reach the point where Ukraine can no longer hold, the consequences will not stop here. Russians will advance, not from boldness, but because we failed to stop them when we could, and we can. Action must be now, or be forced to act later at a much higher cost for the rest of the world. So what's the action? Here's German Chancellor Merz. Ukraine now is free to strike deep inside Russia with Western long-range weapons. Let me read for you the statements that the German Chancellor said himself. This is what he said on German television. There are no longer any range restrictions on weapons supplied to Ukraine. Not from the British, not from the French, not from us, not from the Americans either. This means that Ukraine can now also defend itself by attacking military positions in Russia. For example, it couldn't do that until some time ago, and with very few exceptions. It didn't do that until some time ago. Now it can. In jargon, we call this long-range fire, equipping Ukraine with weapons that attack military targets in the rear. And that is the decisive qualitative difference in Ukraine's warfare. Russia attacks civilian targets absolutely ruthlessly, bombing cities, kindergartens, hospitals, and old people's homes. Ukraine does not do that, and we attach great importance to keeping it that way. But a country that can only defend itself against an attacker on its own territory is not defending itself sufficiently, and this defense of Ukraine is now also taking place against military infrastructure on Russian territory. For the German Chancellor to say this, there is an implication, and Jessica Berlin explains it. Merz announced all range restrictions on military aid to Ukraine are lifted. Ukraine can hit any military target with Western weapons. While not a Taurus confirmation, this announcement would be quite pointless coming from the German Chancellor if Germany wasn't going to send long-range missiles. Without German long-range missiles in play, an announcement like this on behalf of multiple allies would have rather come from either the United States, UK, or France, who have already actually supplied long-range missiles to Ukraine. Furthermore, to not supply Taurus after statements like these would open Merz up to major domestic and international criticism for the worst sort of hypocrisy. It'd be terrible politics. He'd lose worse than Scholz, who at least firmly stood by his incompetent decision to block Taurus. Merz said today Germany would do everything to support Ukraine, and as previously said, German weapons delivery to Ukraine will no longer be made public for OPSEC reasons. Germany is not going to announce specifically what they're sending to Ukraine anymore, leading to further speculation that Taurus cruise missiles are coming. So what's the range? And Taurus cruise missiles, they should be able to go up to 500 kilometers. Ukraine's domestically produced Neptune missiles go 400. ATACMS from the United States go 300. British Storm Shadow and Scalp, the variant given to Ukraine, was 250. What quantity? What range? We're going to find out together as soon as stuff blows up in Russia. But here's a rough map showing all of the military bases and assets within the range of Taurus cruise missiles. And Taurus cruise missiles can be fired from F-16s, which Ukraine now has. Stay tuned. We'll see what happens over the next 2 weeks. What is Russia's reaction? And here is Peskov responding to the German Chancellor. Europe is lifting missile range restrictions for Kyiv. How dangerous is this, and how dangerous is it for them? This is the reporter asking the question. The decisions, if indeed there are such decisions, are absolutely contrary to our aspirations to reach a political settlement and to the efforts that are now being made within the framework of the settlement. These are quite dangerous decisions, if again there were any. So Russia is saying they don't believe the Europeans, and this is just going to make peace harder for some reason. It's so stupid, guys. And it's going to get dumber. Trump says Putin has gone absolutely crazy after Russia steps up their air attacks. Trump put out a tweet. In it, he couldn't help himself. He had to blame Zelensky and blame Biden. But he started strong, saying, I've always had a good relationship with Vladimir Putin of Russia, but something has happened to him. He has gone absolutely crazy. He is needlessly killing a lot of people, and I'm not just talking about soldiers. Missiles and drones are being shot into cities in Ukraine for no reason whatsoever. Where have you been the last 3.5 years, Trump? Putin has been incredibly consistent about bombing civilian cities in Ukraine. There's also a clip, and you can hear for yourself what Donald Trump thinks and feels about Russia bombing civilians, because, once again, this has been going on for forever, but here's Trump.
An update. I'm not happy with what Putin's doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin. I've known him a long time, always gotten along with him, but he's sending rockets into cities and killing people, and I don't like it at all, okay? We're in the middle of talking, and he's shooting rockets into Kiev and other cities. I don't like it at all.
Talk, talk, talk. Trump talks a big talk, but he doesn't actually do anything. Putin, for the last 26 years, has always targeted civilians and bombed cities. This is what Putin did to Chechnya, what Putin did to cities in Georgia in 2008, Syria and Aleppo, leveling the city of millions, and then Ukraine. Russia was bombing the Donbass region and killing Ukrainians for the entire 4 years that Donald Trump was president between 2016 and 2020. Putin hasn't changed, so I don't know what the hell Donald Trump is talking about. Kremlin blames Trump's Putin comments on being emotionally overloaded. He's an emotional guy. He's just very in touch with his feelings, and sometimes Trump just can't control his emotions when he thinks one of his good friends is betraying him. The tweets get dumber. Trump put this out this morning. What Vladimir Putin doesn't realize is that if it weren't for me, lots of really bad things would have already happened to Russia. And I mean really bad. He's playing with fire. This is the President of the United States telling the entire world that he's been shielding and protecting an internationally wanted war criminal who has abducted children. Tens of thousands of children. And if it weren't for Trump, bad things would have happened to Putin by now. Bad things would have happened to Russia. But Trump has been protecting them. This is supposed to be a threat? And the Russians are responding by just making fun of Trump. President Trump warns Moscow, claiming Russia avoided really bad consequences only thanks to him. Putin doesn't realize he's playing with fire. Trump's message leaves little room for misinterpretation until he posts the opposite tomorrow morning. Donald Trump is so stupid, and he's the weakest president the United States has ever had. The Russians on Twitter are openly mocking him. Trump wanted to sound tough and threaten Russia, and the Russians are just saying, "We own you. What are you going to do? We're going to continue killing people until we get our empire back, and we don't actually believe you're going to do anything about it." But this was the gambit we played the last 2 weeks. The last 2 weeks were silly. For people who watched this video, you knew this was going to fail. The Russians were never going to agree to a ceasefire. But the Europeans had to set Donald Trump up. Getting to this point where Donald Trump is angry and tweeting about it, that was the goal of the last 2 weeks, and I guess we succeeded. Good job, everyone. Here's President Macron. Trump now realizes Putin lied to him about Ukraine peace readiness. Here's the French president. He speaks for himself. I'll read his statement. I think President Trump realizes that when President Putin on the phone told him he was ready for peace, or when Putin told his envoys he was ready for peace, Putin lied to them. And so the priority for France, for its European partners, and for the Ukrainians is that we achieve a ceasefire as quickly as possible, as lasting as possible, so that discussions can begin on a robust and lasting peace. And that to achieve this, as we have said 10 days ago in Kyiv, in Europe, and in close coordination with the Americans and several other allies, we set President Putin a deadline so that everyone could finally see that he is lying. And that beyond this deadline, there will be massive retaliation, particularly in terms of sanctions. Here we go. This is where the pressure is coming, political pressure from traditional Republicans on Trump. Trump's been trying to avoid this, talking about, give me more time, I can get peace talks, I can get a peace deal, I can get a ceasefire. And Trump has failed to achieve this in front of his own supporters, in front of his own party. So this is the Senate pro tem, the longest serving senator in the United States Senate, Chuck Grassley. He's not a fan of Putin. And he said, I've had enough of Putin killing innocent people. President Trump, take action, at least sanctions, if you don't want to send weapons. I believe President Trump was sincere when he thought his friendship with Putin will end the war. Now that being the case, it's time for sanctions strong enough so Putin knows the game is over. But everyone's piling on. Everyone's jumping on the bandwagon within the Republican Party, speaking out now that Donald Trump has failed to get a ceasefire. This is Trump's personal spiritual advisor, Pastor Mark Burns. Like President Trump said, Vladimir Putin is crazy. Slava Ukraine. Cool. This is the former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. Putin will not be convinced by talk. He will have to be coerced by economically and militarily eliminating his ability to wage war. As long as he can wage war, he will. This is his legacy, and he recently pointed out Russia fought Sweden for 21 years. He wants to conquer all of Ukraine and then push forward. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, Finland is next on the list. The time to stop him is now, and the place is Ukraine. Here is Republican Representative Don Bacon. It is a time for honesty. Peace talks are having zero effect on Putin. His goal is to dominate Ukraine, and he won't stop until he realizes he cannot win. The United States and allies must arm Ukraine to the teeth, sanction Russia to the max, and confiscate $300 billion in overseas Russian assets. This is Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. He's leading the charge in the Senate. He has 81 senators ready to vote for this sanctions package. I appreciate all that President Trump has done to try to end this terrible war, but to end any war, you must have willing partners. As of yet, Putin is not willing. It goes on, but let's keep moving. This is Republican Representative Brian Fitzpatrick. He's leading the charge in the House. The United States cannot fail to respond as Putin escalates his barbaric assault on innocent Ukrainians. Congress must act immediately and decisively. We need full, crippling sanctions targeting Putin, his regime, and those bankrolling his campaign of terror, until the Russian war machine collapses in on itself. Peace through strength begins with action. There are lots of other Republicans putting out statements today and yesterday, and it has to come from MAGA. It has to come from Republicans. Nobody cares what the Democrats think or say. They're all going to vote for the sanctions package anyways. The charge, the impetus has to come from members of MAGA. And Trump would love to ignore this war. Trump just wants to enrich himself. The Russians have money. The Russians love bribing people. Trump would be happy to take a bribe from the Russians. But there's this problem with the whole world watching. The whole world upset with him that he can't accomplish anything. Politically, guys, this is what we've been fighting for the last 4 or 5 months, and this is a turning point, I think. Trump is still going to look for a way to wiggle out of it. Trump does not want to burn that bridge, his personal friendship with Putin that he claims he has. But the Russians don't care about Trump. The Russians think he's an idiot. They've been manipulating him this entire time. Do you think Trump is going to be able to realize this? Zelensky knows what's going on. Zelensky's keeping his mouth shut. Just let Trump be mad. Let the Russians continue making fun of Trump. And we'll see where this goes. Hopefully there's positive developments and the United States Senate and House will vote on crippling sanctions on Russia's energy industry and their banking industry in the next 2 weeks. I do think there will be movements, there will be a vote, and hopefully Donald Trump will finally support this action. In the meantime, Ukraine has to continue holding on the battlefield. Ukrainian drones target Splav rocket plants in Russia's Tula for the 3rd time this month. There's a video on YouTube, I'll link it down below. Drones hit Russia's Shahid drone factory 1,200 kilometers from Ukraine's border. This is the drone factory in Tatarstan, and Ukraine bombs this about once a month. This is the factory that produces the drones. There's a video, I'll link it down below if you want to see it. Russia tests new anti-drone porcupine tank. Ukraine's drones still win. So we've gone from cope cages, with javelins and NLAWs, to whatever the hell this is. They're calling it the porcupine tank. The theory being that if an FPV drone's trigger hits one of these wires, then the tank won't explode. Spoilers, it didn't work. If you want to see a porcupine tank, an innovation of the Russian military, get blown up by an FPV drone, I'll link this video down below. Recycled fishing nets become Ukraine's frontline anti-drone tool. This is happening all across the front line as both Ukraine and Russia are using more of these FPV drones. You just got to put up nets everywhere. So there are fishermen from Denmark and Sweden who have been donating old fishermen nets to Ukraine's military, and these have to go up absolutely everywhere. Every tree line where Ukrainian defenders are dug in, they got to put up these fishing and cargo nets to tangle the drones and hopefully save some lives. This video I'm going to link down below, and this, once again, I've seen so many of these videos, guys, of how Russian leadership punishes and disciplines their own troops. But this Russian soldier is accused of deserting one of his positions temporarily, like he probably was thirsty and hungry. And they end up tying him up and then dragging him through a field. I forget what the term for this is, but you tie someone up by the legs, you then have a car, an ATV, and you just drag them around. And he's just screaming the entire time. Now, when I link these videos down below on Twitter, you have to be logged in and say you're 18 in order to see violent videos. Telegram and Twitter are really the only platforms that allow you to see videos of humans torturing and killing each other, which is disturbing content. I understand why other platforms don't allow it. But if you want to see what the Russian military is really like, how they treat their own, this military has to be defeated. This ideology and military doctrine that allows for this cannot be allowed to continue in a free and safe world. Dozens of Russian companies suspend dividend payments amid economic uncertainty. I know we've been saying this for a while, but Russia's economy gets worse every day, and this is a huge indicator. Companies suspend dividend payments when they can't afford to pay the dividends. And they can't afford to pay the dividends because they're all operating at a loss currently. Leading firms in the mining and energy sectors are among those foregoing dividend payments. This includes Gazprom, Norilsk Nickel, NLMK, and Severstal, which will not pay dividends for the fourth quarter of 2024 and the first quarter of 2025. It's getting worse. Turkish Airlines cancels flights to Russia amid Ukrainian drone strikes. I don't understand why foreign airlines are still operating in Russia after Russia shot down Azerbaijani Airlines flight back in December. It's not safe to be operating or to send your pilots and crews into Russia when there's active air defense going off all the time. This is a funny story. Belarus has nuclear carriers but no warheads, according to Ukrainian intelligence. Lukashenko wanted his own deterrent, so they signed an agreement with Russia. Putin claimed they were going to station nuclear weapons on the territory of Belarus. And Ukrainian intelligence is saying they've got the road mobiles, they've got the ICBMs and planes that are nuclear capable, but Putin has not actually given any warheads to the Belarusians. It's pretty smart, actually. I'm sure the theory being that in a heightened state of readiness, the Russians would transfer the warheads to Belarus, but day to day, Belarus doesn't actually have any nuclear weapons on their territory. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. Sweden allocates $500 million for Ukraine's defense and security. Thank you so much to the Swedes. The Netherlands sent their last batch of F-16s to protect Ukraine. Thank you so much to the Dutch. All the planes have now arrived. 1,000 for 1,000 swap completed. 303 Ukrainian POWs return in the final phase of a major exchange with Russia. Every time I see these videos, it makes me happy, guys. This is a Ukrainian defender who spent 3 years in Russian captivity, and he's tasting chocolate for the first time in 3 years.
Скільки ви не їли шоколаду?
3 роки. 3 роки. 3 роки ми не їли шоколаду. Зараз ми його з'їмо. Тримай, хлопці, давай. По кусочку. Тримай. Давай. За Україну.
Слава Україні.
Тримай.
Героям слава.
Слава Україні.
Героям слава.
Шоколад 3 роки не їв. Їм. Дякую. Слава Україні.
Tastes like freedom. One more video. This is the Ukrainian defender Dmytro. He spent 17 months in Russian captivity, and this is the moment he got to reunite with his family.
Тільки були в полоні.
Як себе зараз почуваєте?
Добре, тяжкі 17 місяців.
А ви як вас звати?
Діма.
Діма, а прізвище? Гавриленко. Гавриленко. А вас як звати? Катя. А Катя, а ви хто? Ви сестра? Да. Де дружина? Біжіть. Ми розкидалися.
Ви готові до зустрічі?
Фігнулаку розкидалися.
Думаю, так.
Чому? Леся, мали залезати. Мама не вона. А Леся там
Добре, не плач.
A happy reunion. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.